They did not take it loudly. They did not storm your life with obvious violence. They did it quietly, almost politely. A word here, a doubt there, a silence that lingered too long, a betrayal wrapped in familiarity, and before you could name what was happening, your peace, your rare, hard-earned stillness had been lifted from you as gently as a thief lifts a wallet in a crowded room. You kept walking for a while, unaware of the loss, wondering only why the world suddenly felt heavier, noisier, harder to endure. Peace is not a decoration of the soul, it is its oxygen. When it is taken, everything else begins to suffocate. Sleep becomes restless. Thoughts circle like trapped birds. Joy feels suspicious, as though it might vanish the moment you reach for it. And yet, you blamed yourself. You wondered whether you were too sensitive, too trusting, too willing to see good where it no longer lived. You tried to reason with the wound, as though reason alone could stitch what cruelty had torn. Those who stole your peace believed they were clever. They mistook your silence for weakness, your kindness for permission, your patience for blindness. They imagined that taking from you would somehow add to themselves, as if peace were a substance that could be transferred, owned, hoarded. But peace does not work that way. It is not stolen without cost. It leaves behind an absence that demands repayment, and the debt is always collected. At first, they feel nothing. There is even a moment of triumph. They breathe easily while you struggle. They laugh while you carry the weight. But something unseen has already begun. The moment peace is stolen, it turns into a mirror, and what that mirror reflects is unbearable. They begin to hear noises where none exist. Stillness becomes threatening. Silence accuses them. Rest no longer rests. Sleep becomes a negotiation with guilt that never quite settles. You see, peace is not merely calm. It is alignment. It is the quiet agreement between what one does and what one knows to be right. When they shattered that agreement, when they chose harm over honesty, manipulation over mercy, they fractured themselves. That fracture widens slowly, invisibly but relentlessly. They start to feel crowded inside their own minds. Thoughts pile up with nowhere to go. Regret knocks at odd hours. Fear begins to breathe down their neck. You, meanwhile, thought you were losing. You thought the loss of peace meant the loss of ground. But something truer was happening. Your suffering forced you inward. You questioned, reflected, stripped away illusions. Pain taught you discernment. Silence taught you boundaries. Loss taught you value. While they were scattering themselves outward, you were being drawn back to your center. There is a strange justice in how the world is ordered. It does not rush to correct wrongs, but it never forgets them. Those who disrupt peace eventually find themselves unable to rest anywhere. Rooms feel too small. Relationships feel tense. Even joy feels temporary, as though it might collapse if leaned upon. They move constantly, not because they are adventurous, but because stillness exposes them. You may not witness this unraveling directly. Life is not always kind enough to give us front-row seats to justice, but you will sense it in the way they cannot hold eye contact, in the way their words grow defensive, sharp, excessive, in the way they must keep proving, explaining, justifying. A peaceful soul does not need to shout its innocence. A suffocating one does. Your peace, once taken, begins to return, not all at once, but quietly, in fragments, in mornings that feel lighter, in laughter that surprises you, in the sudden realization that you no longer need their approval, their apology, or their recognition. Peace returns when you stop arguing with the past and start honoring what it taught you, and as your lungs fill again, as your inner world becomes spacious, theirs grows tighter. They search for comfort but cannot find it. They chase distraction but never arrive. They sit among people yet feel alone. They lie down but cannot rest. They breathe, yes, but it is shallow, hurried, borrowed. For peace cannot coexist with the memory of having destroyed it in another. This is not revenge. It is consequence. The universe does not punish, it reflects. What you give returns not as an event, but as an atmosphere you must live inside. You offered sincerity, you were wounded. They offered harm, now they live inside its echo. So let them wander, let them search, let them struggle to breathe in rooms filled with their own choices. You do not need to wish them harm. Life is already instructing them with relentless precision. You, meanwhile, are learning how precious peace truly is, not as something to be defended with anger, but protected with wisdom. And once you have reclaimed it, you will never again allow someone so careless to hold something so sacred. They did not take your peace with a dramatic act that could be named and condemned in a single sentence. There was no single moment you could point to and say, "This is where everything broke." Instead, it happened in fragments so small they felt almost harmless at first. A comment spoken casually yet planted with intent. A silence that arrived where reassurance once lived. A look that lingered just long enough to introduce doubt. These were not accidents. They were quiet invasions, subtle enough to bypass your defenses, familiar enough to be trusted. Peace is rarely stolen by strangers. It is taken by those close enough to know where it is kept. They know your patterns, your hopes, your vulnerabilities. They know which words will echo and which silences will hurt more than speech. That is why the theft feels confusing long after it happens. You replay conversations, wondering if you imagined the tone, the implication, the shift. You question your own perception because nothing was loud enough to justify alarm. And so you stay, you endure, you explain things away, believing patience will restore what patience itself is costing you. This is how peace is taken quietly, through erosion, not explosion, one grain at a time, until the foundation begins to weaken. You wake up feeling tense for no clear reason. Your thoughts feel crowded yet unproductive. Rest becomes shallow. Joy feels conditional. You sense something is wrong, but the absence of a clear wound makes you feel foolish for hurting. The thief relies on this confusion. If there is no visible bruise, surely there was no real harm. If there is no shouting, surely nothing serious has happened. And yet, your inner world tells a different story. Silence is one of the most effective tools in this theft. Not the peaceful silence that heals, but the withholding silence that punishes. Silence that arrives after you speak honestly. Silence that replaces warmth with distance. Silence that forces you to fill the gaps with self-blame. You begin to speak less, share less, hope less. Not because you have changed, but because you are adapting to an environment that quietly penalizes openness. Then there are the words that appear innocent on the surface. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive. I was just joking. These phrases are small enough to escape confrontation, yet powerful enough to dismantle trust in your own judgment. Over time, you stop listening to your instincts. You begin to doubt emotions that once guided you well. The thief does not need to convince others. You become the one argue against yourself. Familiar betrayal cuts deepest because it wears the mask of concern. Advice that subtly undermines. Questions that sound caring but carry accusation. Support that arrives with conditions. You sense the shift but cannot name it without sounding dramatic. So you remain quiet, believing restraint is maturity, believing endurance is love, believing sacrifice will eventually be noticed. Meanwhile, your peace continues to disappear. Not all at once, but enough that you begin to forget what ease once felt like. The most dangerous part of quiet theft is that it trains you to normalize discomfort. You tell yourself, this is how relationships are. This is what closeness costs. This is the price of being understanding. And because nothing catastrophic happens, you accept the slow drain as normal life. The thief never has to break the door down. You leave it unlocked yourself, hoping kindness will be rewarded instead of exploited. What makes this kind of loss so devastating is not just that peace is taken, but that the taking is denied. If confronted, they will appear surprised, offended, confused. They will insist nothing was meant, nothing was done, nothing was wrong, and once again you are pushed inward, left alone with an ache that has no witness. The theft is complete when you start protecting the one who harmed you from the truth of what they caused. Yet even in this quiet devastation, something remains awake inside you, a faint resistance, a discomfort that refuses to be silenced completely. It is the part of you that knows peace is not meant to be negotiated away in pieces. That inner knowing grows louder as the loss deepens. It begins to ask questions you can no longer ignore. Why am I always uneasy here? Why do I feel smaller, guarded, exhausted? Why does my spirit feel watched instead of welcomed? This is where awareness begins, not with rage, but with recognition. The moment you realize peace was not lost by chance, but taken by pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can no longer unsee it. When peace is taken, the body often continues its routines as though nothing has changed. You wake, you speak, you move through hours and obligations. To anyone watching, you appear functional, perhaps even composed, but inside, something essential has thinned. Peace is not a luxury of the soul, it is the air it breathes. Remove it, and everything else becomes labor. Each thought costs more effort. Each decision feels heavier. Even rest requires work. This is how suffocation begins, not with the dramatic gasp of drowning, but with a quiet shortage you cannot quite explain. You lie down at night and your mind refuses to loosen its grip. Thoughts stack on top of one another without resolution. You replay moments, not because you want to, but because your inner world no longer feels safe enough to settle. Sleep becomes shallow, interrupted, filled with a vigilance you did not consciously choose. Morning arrives, but it brings no renewal. The soul reacts to the loss of peace long before the mind understands it. You grow irritable without knowing why. Small inconveniences feel unbearable. Sounds seem louder. Silence feels tense. You find yourself holding your breath in conversations, measuring words, scanning for danger where warmth once lived. This constant alertness is exhausting, yet you cannot turn it off. A soul deprived of peace does not rest, it guards. Breathing becomes symbolic here. You still inhale and exhale, but the breath no longer reaches deep places. There is a tightness in the chest, a pressure behind the eyes, a subtle sense that something is always about to go wrong. You try to relax, but relaxation feels undeserved or unsafe. Peace once gave you permission to exist without defense. Without it, you feel You must earn every moment of calm, and even then it rarely stays. What makes this suffocation especially cruel is that it is invisible. There is no clear injury to point to, no obvious disaster others can acknowledge. You struggle to explain why you feel depleted because explanations require clarity, and clarity itself has been drained. So you simplify it for others. You say you are tired, you say you are stressed, you say nothing at all. Meanwhile, the soul continues to gasp quietly, unheard. Joy in this state becomes suspicious. When something good happens, you brace yourself. You wait for the interruption, the cost, the reversal. Happiness feels fragile, temporary, borrowed. You no longer sink into moments, you hover above them, ready to retreat. Peace once allowed joy to be innocent. Without peace, joy feels like a risk you are not sure you can afford. Even faith, hope, and creativity struggle to breathe without peace. Faith becomes anxious instead of trusting. Hope becomes conditional instead of expectant. Creativity feels blocked, not because inspiration is gone, but because the inner space it needs has collapsed. Peace is the room where the soul stretches. When that room is taken, everything curls inward to survive. You may try to fix this suffocation through effort. You try harder to be positive. You force gratitude. You discipline your thoughts. But peace cannot be manufactured through strain. Effort without peace only tightens the chest further. The soul knows the difference between healing and performance. It longs not for control, but for safety. There is also a quiet grief in this loss, the grief of realizing how much of yourself you have been holding back just to function. You notice how guarded you have become, how rarely you laugh without checking the room, How often you rehearse conversations in advance. These are survival habits, not character flaw. They are the language of a soul that has learned it cannot breathe freely where it is. And yet, even here, awareness begins to stir. You start to recognize the pattern of your breath, where it shortens, where it tightens, where it eases. You begin to notice which spaces drain you and which ones give you a moment of relief. This noticing is not yet peace, but it is the first sign that the soul has not given up. A suffocating soul still searches for air. Those who take your peace rarely see themselves as thieves. In their own minds, they are reasonable, justified, even generous. What allows them to act this way is a dangerous misreading of your nature. They look at your restraint and call it weakness. They observe your willingness to listen and assume it means they may speak without care. They watch you endure and conclude that endurance has no limit. Your quiet becomes an invitation. Your kindness becomes permission. Kindness, when misunderstood, becomes a liability in the presence of those who measure power by how much they can extract from another without resistance. They notice that you do not retaliate quickly, that you pause before reacting, that you try to understand before accusing. Instead of recognizing this as strength, they treat it as an open door. They test it with small intrusions. They cross minor boundaries and wait to see if you object. When you don't, because you believe grace will teach what force never could, they advance further. Silence plays a critical role here, not the silence of wisdom, but the silence of self-control. You choose not to explain every hurt. You choose not to confront every slight. You choose peace over conflict, believing that restraint preserves harmony. But to the wrong eyes, this restraint looks like surrender. They do not hear the discipline in your quiet, they hear absence. And absence, to them, means opportunity. It's also patience, the long patience that hopes people will correct themselves once they see the impact of their actions. You assume conscience will awaken. You assume empathy will eventually respond. You assume that if you model respect, respect will return. But patience, when met with selfishness, becomes invisible. They do not see what you are holding back. They only notice what you allow. And allowance, to someone without reverence for peace, looks like entitlement. What they fail to understand is that your calm is not accidental. It is chosen. It is built from reflection, pain survived, and values deeply rooted. You are not quiet because you have nothing to say. You are quiet because you understand the weight of words. You are not gentle because you are fragile. You are gentle because you know how easily harm spreads. But they cannot read this language. They mistake depth for emptiness, stillness for absence, mercy for weakness. This misinterpretation gives them a false sense of power. They begin to believe they are in control of the dynamic. They push further, speak sharper, withhold more. They assume you will always adapt, always absorb, always forgive. What they do not see is the cost accumulating within you. Each moment of unreciprocated understanding subtracts something. Each boundary ignored tightens the air around the relationship. Each unchallenged act of disrespect teaches them a lesson you never intended to teach, that you will carry what they refuse to hold. There is a quiet arrogance in this behavior. It rests on the belief that strength must announce itself loudly, that power must dominate, that value must be defended aggressively. By this measure, your refusal to fight appears like defeat, but this is a shallow arithmetic. Strength that shouts often does so because it cannot endure silence. Power that exploits calm reveals its own insecurity. Over time, this imbalance creates a distortion. You begin to question why giving feels so draining. You wonder why being understanding leaves you exhausted. You feel the subtle resentment of carrying weight that was never yours. And yet, you hesitate to name it, because naming it might break the image they have of you, the agreeable one, the patient one, the easy one. You fear that asserting yourself will confirm their accusation that you are difficult, sensitive, or changed. But something crucial is happening beneath that hesitation. Awareness is sharpening. You begin to see the pattern clearly. Respect was never missing because you failed to earn it. It was missing because it was never offered. Your peace was not lost because you were weak. It was taken because you were strong enough to be targeted and quiet enough to be misunderstood. This realization alters the internal balance. You start to recognize that kindness without boundaries invites consumption, that silence without discernment invites distortion, that patience without reciprocity invites decay. Not because kindness, silence, or patience are flawed, but because they must be paired with self-respect to remain life-giving, and in that recognition, something shifts. The permission they assumed begins to expire. Not through anger, but through clarity. Not through confrontation, but through inner withdrawal. You stop offering access where there is no care. You stop explaining yourself to those who only listen for advantage. You stop mistaking endurance for duty. They may never understand when the dynamic changes. They will only feel the absence of what they once took freely. Peace is never taken without consequence, though the consequence is rarely immediate or obvious. There is a myth that harm can be committed cleanly, that one can take what is sacred from another and walk away untouched. This belief survives only Becca. Use the cost does not announce itself at the moment of theft. It waits. It settles quietly into the one who took, embedding itself where applause cannot reach and excuses cannot dissolve. The moment peace is stolen, something is transferred, but not what the thief imagines. They do not gain strength. They do not gain ease. What they inherit is weight. An invisible debt settles into their inner life, and like all unpaid debts, it accrues interest. At first, it is barely noticeable. Life continues. Smiles appear convincing. Success may even arrive. But beneath the surface, alignment has been broken, and the soul keeps perfect records even when the mind pretends otherwise. This debt shows itself in small fractures, a restlessness that has no external cause, a need to stay busy because stillness brings discomfort, a tendency to justify actions repeatedly, even when no one is asking. These are not coincidences. They are symptoms of something unresolved. When peace is taken from another, it does not disappear. It turns inward and begins to press against the one who caused its loss. There is a quiet irony here. The thief often believes they have escaped consequence because nothing dramatic happens, no confrontation, no immediate collapse, no visible punishment. But peace does not demand drama to collect what is owed. It works internally, reshaping the inner climate. What once felt natural, rest, contentment, ease, begins to feel foreign. The soul becomes crowded with noise, explanations, defenses. Silence, which once felt neutral, now feels threatening. This is because peace is not merely an emotion, it is a state of inner agreement. When one violates it in another, they fracture it in themselves. They may continue to function, even prosper outwardly, but inwardly there is a misalignment that cannot be silenced. The conscience may not shout, but it breathes, and its breath is Evie. The debt grows heavier when the theft is denied. When harm is minimized, mocked, or justified, the soul is forced to carry two burdens instead of one, the act itself and the lie required to live with it. This is why those who take peace often become defensive without provocation, why they react sharply to gentle questions, why they interpret boundaries as attacks. The debt has made them fragile in places they refuse to examine. What they owe is not an apology alone. It is coherence. It is the restoration of integrity between what they know and what they did. Until that restoration occurs, the debt remains active. It shows up in relationships that feel hollow, in victories that feel strangely empty, in nights where sleep comes but does not satisfy, in laughter that ends too quickly, leaving an aftertaste of unease. Meanwhile, the one who lost peace begins, slowly, to recover something else: clarity. Pain sharpens vision, loss clarifies value. While the thief carries the weight of denial, the wounded carry the work of truth. This difference matters. One moves toward healing, the other circles avoidance. One learns, the other repeats. There is no need for revenge because the debt enforces itself. Life becomes a narrow space, For those who owe peace, they refuse to acknowledge. They may move freely in the world, but internally they feel compressed. Decisions feel harder, trust feels riskier, joy feels conditional. The atmosphere they live in reflects what they created. Peace, once taken, becomes a mirror. It shows the cost not to the one who lost it, but to the one who tried to live without honoring it. And that mirror cannot be shattered, only avoided. At first there is a lightness that deceives them, a sense of having won something. They breathe easily while you struggle to find steadiness. They move through days with confidence, even satisfaction, believing they have escaped the weight you now carry. This early ease convinces them that their actions were harmless, justified, even clever. They mistake the absence of immediate consequence for innocence. Victory in this stage feels simple and clean. But this comfort is fragile. It relies on distraction. As long as life remains loud enough, as long as movement replaces reflection, they can maintain the illusion that nothing has been disturbed. They keep themselves busy, surrounded, entertained. Silence becomes something to avoid, not cherish. When stillness appears, it unsettles them. They do not yet know why, only that it does. Slowly, unease enters in small ways. A moment alone that feels strangely heavy. A pause in conversation that creates tension instead of rest. They begin to notice a restlessness they cannot explain. The peace they thought they had gained reveals itself as borrowed, temporary, dependent on noise and motion. The moment distraction fades, discomfort rises. This is when unrest replaces triumph. Sleep grows inconsistent. The mind, once quiet, begins to wander into places they would rather not visit. Memories surface uninvited. Words replay. Expressions they dismissed return with unexpected clarity. They tell themselves it means nothing. Everyone has thoughts, they reason. Everyone feels unsettled sometimes. But this unrest has direction. It circles the same places. It points again and again toward what was taken. The body often knows before the mind admits. There is tension carried in the shoulders, shallow breathing without effort, irritation that flares too quickly. They become less patient, less tolerant of others' needs. Minor inconveniences feel disproportionate. This is not because the world has grown heavier, but because the internal balance has shifted. Peace once absorbed life's pressures quietly. Without it, everything presses harder. They may try to reclaim the feeling of victory through justification. They rehearse their reasons. They remind themselves of your flaws, your silence, your compliance. They rewrite the story so they remain blameless. But justification is not peace. It is a substitute that requires constant maintenance. The story must be repeated because it does not settle. Each repetition reveals its own fragility. Relationships begin to reflect this change. Conversations feel strained. Trust becomes difficult to extend. They suspect motives where none exist. They feel easily challenged, easily offended. This defensiveness is not strength, it is protection. The inner unrest has made them vulnerable, though they would never name it as such. They guard themselves not against others, but against what might rise if they relax. The strangest part is that they may look successful during this phase. Outward stability can coexist with inner suffocation. Achievement does not heal misalignment, it often amplifies it. The more they gain, the more confusing the unrest becomes. I should feel satisfied, they think. I should feel calm. The word should becomes another pressure point, another reminder that something essential is missing. They might notice it most when they encounter genuine peace in others. Calm becomes irritating. Contentment feels suspicious. Your quiet recovery, even from a distance, unsettles them. Not because they wish you harm, but because your breathing reminds them of their own shortness of breath. Peace, once seen, exposes its absence. This is the stage where they realize, without fully admitting it, that something has turned against them. The victory has expired. What remains is a tightening space, an atmosphere that feels increasingly difficult to inhabit. They search for relief in explanation, in blame, in distraction. But peace cannot be replaced by activity, nor can unrest be silenced by success. What they experience now is not punishment, it is feedback, a signal that something vital was disrupted and has not been restored. The soul deprived of peace does not collapse immediately, it protests slowly, and each protest grows louder the longer it is ignored. They may not connect this unrest to you consciously. The mind is skilled at separation, but the body remembers, the inner climate remembers, the breath remembers. While they continue searching outward for comfort, the unrest waits patiently within, asking to be acknowledged. When a conscience is fractured, stillness becomes unbearable. What once offered rest now feels like exposure. Silence, instead of soothing, begins to accuse. It presses in, heavy and watchful, as though it knows something they are trying to forget. This is not imagination, it is the natural response of an inner world that has lost alignment. A clear conscience welcomes quiet, a wounded one fears it. They begin to avoid being alone with themselves. Not because they dislike solitude, but because solitude removes the distractions that keep truth at bay. In the absence of noise, the mind drifts toward unresolved places. Words once dismissed resurface. Moments once minimized return with sharper edges. The stillness does not invent guilt. It simply removes the cover under which guilt has been hiding. This is why they keep themselves occupied. Constant movement becomes a necessity. Schedules fill. Screens glow late into the night. Background noise remains on, even when no one is listening. Silence feels too intimate, too revealing. It invites reflection, and reflection threatens the carefully constructed narrative they use to live with themselves. So they stay busy, mistaking activity for peace, motion for relief. When silence does arrive unexpectedly, in the early hours of the morning, in the pause after laughter, in tea, a gap between conversations, it brings discomfort instead of rest. The body tenses, the breath shortens. There is an urge to escape the moment, to check something, say something, do something, anything but remain present. Stillness has become unsafe because it reflects what action can distract from but never erase. The conscience does not shout, it whispers, and whispers are easiest to hear when everything else is quiet. It asks questions they do not want to answer. Why did I say that? Why did I withhold care? Why did I take what was not mine to take? These questions do not demand punishment. They demand honesty. And honesty at this stage feels like a threat. They may tell themselves they have moved on, that the past no longer matters, but a conscience that has not been reconciled does not accept dismissal. It waits. It repeats itself patiently, resurfacing in unease, irritability, and sudden waves of discomfort that seem to have no clear cause. The body becomes the messenger when the mind refuses to listen. This inner tension leaks outward. They become uneasy around calm people. Silence in others feels judgmental even when no judgment exists. They interpret neutrality as disapproval, quiet as criticism. Their own unrest projects itself onto the world. Peace in someone else feels like a spotlight on what they lack, and so they may attempt to disrupt it, dismiss it, or belittle it. Anything to quiet the mirror it holds up. Night becomes especially difficult. The day offers enough distraction to keep thoughts scattered, but the night strips those defenses away. Lying still, with no tasks left to complete, they feel exposed. Sleep may come, but it is thin, fragmented. Dreams surface that make no sense yet leave emotional residue behind. Morning arrives without restoration. Rest was attempted, but peace was not present to complete it. What they fear in stillness is not condemnation, it is recognition. The moment of seeing clearly what was done, what was taken, what was avoided. Recognition would require responsibility, and responsibility would require change. Until that step is taken, stillness will continue to feel hostile. Silence will continue to accuse, not because it is cruel, but because it is honest. Meanwhile, the contrast grows sharper. You, who once struggled to breathe, begin to find small pockets of calm. Quiet starts to feel less threatening again. Solitude becomes gentler. The same silence that presses on them begins to loosen around you. This difference is not accidental. It is the result of moving toward truth instead of away from it. A broken conscience cannot rest. It can only distract itself. And distraction, no matter how elaborate, always runs out eventually. When it does, stillness remains, waiting, patient, unyielding, holding up the truth they have been trying not to see. When peace is taken, the soul has no choice but to turn inward. There is nowhere else to go. Distraction no longer works the way it once did. External comforts lose their power to soothe. What remains is an interior landscape suddenly made visible, like a room revealed when the lights are switched on after years of dimness. At first, this inward turn feels like punishment. You sit with questions you once avoided. You face emotions you once postponed. The quiet becomes unfamiliar, even frightening. But this inward pull is not meant to break you. It is meant to show you the truth. Loss strips illusions with ruthless honesty. You begin to see how much you excused, how often you minimized your own discomfort to preserve someone else's comfort, how many times you told yourself it's not that bad when your body was already saying otherwise. Peace, when present, often cushions these compromises. Without it, there is no padding left. Reality press close, and it demands to be acknowledged. This is where discernment is born, not as suspicion, but as clarity. You start noticing patterns instead of isolated moments. You see that what hurt you was not a misunderstanding, but a repeated behavior, not a single careless word, but a consistent dismissal, not a one-time lapse, but a way of relating that left you smaller each time. This realization is painful, but it is also grounding. Confusion begins to lift, replaced by understanding. You also begin to see yourself more clearly, not through the distorted lens of blame, but through honesty. You recognize where you stayed too long, explained too much, hoped against evidence. This is not self-condemnation, it is self-awareness. Discernment does not accuse, it reveals. It shows you where your values were stretched beyond health, where your generosity became self-erasure, where your loyalty outpaced wisdom. In this inward space, illusions fall away quietly. You stop romanticizing what drained you. You stop defending what harmed you. You stop confusing familiarity with safety. The stories you told yourself to survive no longer feel necessary. You begin to ask different questions. Not how do I fix this, but why did I tolerate it? Not how do I get them back, but what did I lose in trying to keep them? This turning inward is uncomfortable because it removes the option of denial. You cannot blame noise, chaos, or circumstance anymore. You are left with the simple, demanding work of truth. But truth, once faced, begins to organize the inner world. What was scattered starts to take shape. What was heavy begins to make sense. Discernment brings order where pain once ruled. You also discover something unexpected, strength that was previously hidden by peace. Peace allows life to flow easily, but pain reveals capacity. You realize you can sit with discomfort without collapsing. You can question long-held beliefs without losing yourself. You can stand alone without disappearing. This realization changes how you see yourself. You are no longer defined by what was taken, but by what you learned in its absence. As discernment deepens, your boundaries begin to clarify. You recognize that not everything requires explanation, that not everyone deserves access, that being understood is less important than being safe. These insights are not loud or dramatic. They settle quietly, like furniture being arranged properly in a room that was once cluttered. You feel more solid, even before peace fully returns. This inward work also sharpens compassion, but with limits. You can understand without excusing. You can empathize without surrendering. You can forgive without reopening doors. Discernment teaches you that love without wisdom becomes self-betrayal, and wisdom without love becomes cold. The balance between the two is not learned in comfort, it is learned in loss. Gradually, the inward space becomes less hostile, Reflection no longer feels like punishment. Silence becomes a place of sorting rather than suffering. You begin to trust your perceptions again. The fog lifts. The noise quiets. What remains is not yet peace, but something just as important: clarity. And clarity changes Eve. Writhing, suffering, when it arrives uninvited, has a way of rearranging what once felt non-negotiable. It presses against the places where you overextended, where you gave without limit, where you allowed access simply because it was asked for. At first this feels cruel. You wonder why pain would choose to teach instead of comfort, why loss would become a lesson instead of a sentence. But slowly, almost against your will, you begin to notice that suffering is not random. It is precise. It goes straight to the areas where your boundaries were thinnest. Before the loss of peace, boundaries may have felt unnecessary, even unkind. You believed love meant availability, that loyalty required endurance, that understanding demanded self-sacrifice. You prided yourself on being flexible, forgiving, open, and for a time this openness felt virtuous. But suffering exposes the hidden cost of unguarded generosity. It reveals how easily kindness can become a passageway for harm when it is not protected by discernment. Pain sharpens awareness in a way comfort never does. You begin to notice how certain interactions drain you, not because you are weak, but because something essential is being taken. You feel it in your body before you can name it in words. A tightening in the chest, a heaviness after conversations that should have felt neutral, an exhaustion that sleep does not repair. These sensations become signals. Suffering trains you to listen to them instead of dismissing them. Self-worth, too, begins to change under pressure. You realize that constantly explaining yourself is a form of erasure, that tolerating disrespect does not make you noble, it makes you smaller. That peace is not preserved by silence alone, but by self-respect. These realizations do not arrive with applause. They arrive quietly, often painfully, as you recognize how often you placed others above your own well-being without question. Boundaries start to form not as walls, but as clarity. You understand that saying no is not rejection, it is definition. You see that distance is sometimes an act of care for yourself and for others. Suffering teaches you that access is not a right, but a privilege earned through consistency, respect, and safety. This understanding is not harsh. It is sober. It brings sobriety to places where you once operated on hope alone. There is also a reclaiming of self-worth that happens here. You stop measuring your value by how much you can endure. You begin to see endurance not as proof of strength, but as something to be used wisely. Strength, you learn, includes the ability to step back, to withdraw, to choose yourself without apology. This is not selfishness, it is stewardship of what remains sacred inside you. Suffering also clarifies your values. You see more clearly what you will no longer negotiate. Honesty becomes essential. Emotional safety becomes non-optional. Mutual respect becomes a baseline rather than a bonus. These standards are not formed in theory, they are forged in lived experience. Each painful moment adds definition like pressure shaping stone. You may notice a shift in how you speak, fewer explanations, more pauses, less urgency to be understood. This is not indifference, it is confidence. You no longer feel compelled to justify your needs, because suffering has shown you what happens when needs are ignored. You trust your internal compass more than external approval. The noise of others' expectations begins to fade. What is most striking is that this sharpening does not harden you. It refines you. You remain capable of empathy, but you no longer confuse empathy with obligation. You can see pain in others without absorbing it as your responsibility. You can care without collapsing. Suffering teaches you that compassion is sustainable only when it has borders. As self-worth strengthens, something subtle changes in how you occupy space. You stand differently. You listen without shrinking. You speak without bracing for impact. You are less reactive, not because you feel nothing, but because you finally know what is worth responding to. Boundaries bring a strange kind of calm even before peace fully returns. They create order where chaos once reigned. Suffering in this way becomes an unlikely teacher. It does not flatter. It does not comfort quickly. But it does something far more enduring. It shows you where you end and others begin. It teaches you the shape of your own dignity. And once learned, this lesson does not leave you easily. Those who disturb peace eventually discover that rest becomes difficult everywhere they go. It is not that the world rejects them openly, it is that nothing seems to receive them fully anymore. Rooms feel tight even when they are spacious. Conversations feel strained even when they are polite. Relationships feel unsettled even when they appear intact. There is a subtle sense of not fitting, of never quite arriving. This is the quiet aftermath of having disrupted something sacred and never repairing it. Rest requires safety, not the absence of activity, but the presence of inner permission to be still. When someone violates peace, especially knowingly, they lose that permission. Their nervous system remains alert, scanning, bracing. Even moments meant for relaxation carry a faint edge of vigilance. They sit down, but they do not settle. They lie down, but they do not release. Their body remains slightly prepared for something to go wrong, even when nothing is happening. This unrest follows them from place to place. Changing environments offers temporary relief, but it never lasts. New spaces promise a fresh start, yet the same discomfort arrives shortly after. The problem is not the location, it is the inner atmosphere they bring with them. Peace is not external. It cannot be outrun or replaced by novelty. Without inner alignment, every place eventually feels restless. Relationships suffer most under this condition. Connection requires ease, and ease cannot exist where trust in oneself is fractured. They may be surrounded by people, yet feel strangely alone. Conversations feel performative rather than nourishing. Laughter feels brief, almost rehearsed. They sense that something is missing, but they cannot identify it without confronting what they avoid. Instead, they may grow impatient with others, critical, distant. It is easier to fault the environment than examine the self. There is also a creeping dissatisfaction that settles in. Achievements feel underwhelming. Milestones feel hollow. What should bring contentment brings only a momentary lift before the familiar tightness returns. They begin to wonder why nothing satisfies for long, why joy slips through their fingers, why every victory requires another immediately after. This hunger is not ambition, it is absence. Peace, once made enough, feels sufficient. Without it, nothing stays enough. Their restlessness often shows itself as movement. They keep going, keep changing, keep adjusting. New plans, new goals, new explanations. Stillness feels like stagnation to them, though it is actually exposure they fear. They may say they thrive on activity, but beneath that claim is a deeper truth. Stopping feels dangerous. When they stop, they must feel. When they feel, they must remember. Even solitude becomes uncomfortable. Silence presses in too closely. Thoughts surface uninvited. The mind wanders toward unresolved places. They distract themselves not because they are shallow, but because depth now feels threatening. A place that once might have been restful, a quiet room, an empty afternoon, now feels like a confrontation waiting to happen. This inability to rest is not punishment in the dramatic sense. It is consequence in the most natural form. Peace is what allows a person to inhabit a moment fully. Without it, every moment feels provisional, as though something must still be done, fixed, or defended. They live in a constant state of almost relaxed, almost content, almost settled, almost but never fully. Meanwhile, you may notice a strange reversal. Places that once felt heavy to you begin to feel lighter. Silence that once felt threatening becomes gentler. You start to experience rest, not because life has become perfect, but because your inner world is reorganizing. Boundary. ES have created safety. Clarity has reduced noise. You can sit in a moment without scanning for harm. This contrast deepens the divide. They search outward for relief, while you begin to find it inwardly. They keep adjusting the world around them, while you adjust your relationship to yourself. They cannot rest anywhere because rest requires reconciliation. And reconciliation requires honesty, something they have not yet chosen. The world continues to offer them places, people, opportunities. But without peace, none of it feels like home. They remain visitors everywhere, unable to unpack fully, unable to breathe deeply. And this unsettledness follows them quietly, faithfully, waiting for the moment they are willing to face what was disturbed and what was never restored. When peace is absent, it leaves traces that others can feel long before they are spoken. It reveals itself not in confession, but in defensiveness. Words begin to arrive too quickly, too forcefully, as though silence itself were an accusation. Explanations spill out where none were requested. Justifications appear uninvited. The voice grows sharper, louder, more crowded with certainty. This noise is not confidence, it is armor. A peaceful soul does not need to prove itself. It rests easily in its own coherence. But when peace has been disturbed, coherence fractures, and the fracture must be covered. So speech becomes excessive. Every action requires a reason. Every question feels like a challenge. Every pause feels dangerous. The person begins to argue not with others, but with an inner witness they cannot silence. You may notice how quickly they take offense. Neutral statements feel like attacks. Boundaries feel like rejection. Calm disagreement feels like betrayal. This hypersensitivity is not strength, it is exposure. When peace is gone, the inner world becomes unstable, and instability seeks control. If they can dominate the narrative, perhaps they can quiet what is unsettled inside. Their words often carry urgency, as though something vital is always at stake. Conversations feel tense, even when the topic is ordinary. There is little room for curiosity, because curiosity invites uncertainty, and uncertainty threatens the fragile balance they are trying to maintain. They prefer certainty, even harsh certainty, over the vulnerability of reflection. Noise feels safer than quiet, because quiet asks questions. Justification becomes a daily ritual. They rehearse their reasons again and again, refining them, sharpening them, convincing themselves as much as others. The story must be repeated because it does not settle. A true explanation brings relief. A false one requires constant reinforcement. Each repetition tightens rather than loosens, adding another layer to the noise. This defensiveness leaks into relationships. Listening becomes difficult. They interrupt, correct, redirect. They feel misunderstood even when they are clearly heard. Understanding is not what they seek, absolution is. But absolution cannot be granted externally when the inner world remains unresolved. So they keep talking, keep explaining, keep pushing back against questions no one has asked aloud. There is also a peculiar impatience that develops. Peace once created spaciousness, allowing room for difference, delay, and nuance. Without it, tolerance shrinks. Waiting feels unbearable. Ambiguity feels threatening. They want immediate agreement, immediate validation, immediate closure. Anything less feels like danger. This urgency is not about time, it is about escape, from stillness, from reflection, from the quiet voice within that has not been reconciled. You may notice how often they speak of being misunderstood, mistreated, unfairly judged. These claims may contain fragments of truth, but they also shields. By casting themselves as perpetually wronged, they avoid examining where they may have caused harm. Victimhood becomes another form of noise, another way to redirect attention outward. It is easier to defend against imagined attacks than to sit with real accountability. Even humor can become sharp in this state. Jokes carry an edge. Sarcasm replaces sincerity. Laughter comes quickly but fades just as fast. Humor, once playful, becomes defensive, another way to keep depth at bay. The moment a conversation threatens to slow down, to turn inward, a joke is deployed to break the tension. Noise resumes its protective role. What is most striking is how exhausting this becomes. Constant justification drains energy. Constant vigilance tightens the body. Constant noise leaves no room for rest. They may complain of fatigue without understanding its source. They may blame stress, circumstances, other people. Rarely do they recognize that the noise itself is the burden. A soul at peace does not have to defend its existence. Meanwhile, your quiet begins to change. Where silence once felt imposed, it now feels chosen. You speak less, but with more weight. You do not rush to explain yourself. You allow misunderstandings to exist without chasing correction. This is not indifference, it is stability. Your calm becomes unsettling to those who rely on noise to survive. They may interpret your quiet as arrogance, withdrawal, or judgment. In truth, it is simply the absence of inner chaos. Your silence does not accuse them, it reflects them. And reflection is uncomfortable for anyone who has not made peace with what they see. Noise, defensiveness, constant justification, these are not signs of power. They are signs of a soul struggling to breathe in the space it created for itself. And until peace is restored, the noise will continue, filling every pause, interrupting every still moment, working tirelessly to drown out the one thing it cannot escape, the truth waiting in silence. Peace does not return with announcement or ceremony. It does not arrive demanding witnesses or proof. It comes the way morning light enters a room, slowly, almost unnoticed, until you realize the darkness has thinned. And when it begins to return, it does so at the exact moment you stop begging the past to explain itself. The release is subtle but decisive. You no longer need them to understand, to admit, to apologize, or to validate what you lived through. For a long time, your mind may have rehearsed conversations that never happened. You imagined what you would say if they finally listened. You pictured the relief of being believed, the clarity of hearing them acknowledge the harm. You told yourself that peace would follow that moment, that closure required their cooperation. But this expectation kept you tethered. Every unanswered question, every silence, every denial reopened the wound. You were waiting for permission to heal. Peace begins when you withdraw that request. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, something inside loosens. Not because the past changes, but because your energy stops flowing backward. You realize how exhausting it has been to carry the hope that someone else would fix what they broke. You see that approval, when it comes late or reluctantly, rarely heals anything. It only delays your return to yourself. This release does not feel triumphant. It feels quiet, almost anticlimactic. One day you notice you no longer replay certain memories with the same intensity. Another day you realize you have gone hours without thinking about what they might think of you. Their opinion loses urgency. Their silence loses authority. The space they once occupied in your inner world begins to shrink, not be. Because you forced it out, but because you stopped feeding it. Peace returns when you accept that not all truth will be acknowledged by those who fled from it. Some people protect their self-image at any cost, even if that cost is your pain. Waiting for their honesty only binds you to their avoidance. Letting go is not surrendering your truth, it is refusing to let their refusal define your healing. You also begin to notice a change in how you speak. You explain less, you clarify less. You feel no urgency to defend your character or your choices. When questioned, you answer simply, or not at all. Silence becomes an option again, not as self-protection, but as self-respect. You no longer feel compelled to convince anyone of what you lived. You know it now, and that knowing is enough. This is where peace starts to breathe again. It shows up in small freedoms. You choose rest without guilt. You enjoy moments without scanning for threat. You laugh without immediately bracing for loss. These are not dramatic victories, but they are real. They signal that your nervous system is no longer waiting for danger to pass before allowing calm. Peace is not perfect safety. It is the confidence that you can respond without disappearing. Releasing the need for apology is often the hardest step, not because you crave their remorse, but because apology feels like justice. It feels like balance. But peace teaches you something quieter and deeper. Justice does not always arrive as words. Sometimes it arrives as distance. Sometimes it arrives as clarity. Sometimes it arrives as the simple fact that you are no longer where the harm can reach you. You may notice that when peace begins to return, old triggers lose their power. Places, songs, phrases that once stirred discomfort now pass through you more gently. This does not mean the past no longer mattered. It means it no longer governs. Memory remains, but it no longer controls your breath. There is also a strengthening that comes with this quiet return. You trust yourself more. You no longer second-guess your perceptions simply because they were once dismissed. You stop seeking mirrors in people who only distort your reflection. You choose environments that feel steady instead of dramatic. Peace sharpens your preferences without making you rigid. Most importantly, peace returns when you stop trying to be understood by those who never listened. Understanding becomes something you offer yourself. You honor what you endured without needing consensus. You allow your healing to be private, incomplete, human. You stop measuring progress by external signs and begin recognizing internal shifts, and in that inward turning, peace settles back into place, not as something fragile to be guarded obsessively, but as something grounded, earned, and quietly resilient. Life does not strike back the way anger imagines it should. It does not gather witnesses or announce judgments. It does not seek drama or spectacle. It reflects, quietly, faithfully, without emotion. What is released into the world returns not as punishment, but as atmosphere, the inner climate a person must breathe every day without escape. This is why what happens to those who disturb peace rarely looks like revenge. There is no sudden collapse that satisfies the imagination, no moment where everything is taken at once. Instead, life arranges itself around them in ways that mirror what they gave. If they created confusion, they live in confusion. If they planted unrest, they wake up restless. If they fractured trust, they find it difficult to trust anyone, including themselves. Reflection is subtle, which makes it easy to dismiss at first. They may tell themselves life is unfair, people are difficult, circumstances are against them. They may blame timing, stress, bad luck, but the pattern repeats no matter the setting. Different people, same tension. New opportunities, familiar dissatisfaction. The mirror keeps appearing even when the scenery changes. What makes reflection so powerful is that it feels personal without being personal at all. Life does not single them out, it simply responds. It answers energy with environment, intent with outcome, choice with condition. And because this response is neutral, it cannot be argued with or negotiated away. There is no one to convince, no one to manipulate. The result must be lived, not explained. They may try to outrun this reflection by improving appearances. More success, more recognition, more movement. But reflection does not operate on the surface. It works inward, shaping how experiences are felt rather than how they look. A celebration can feel hollow, a compliment can feel undeserved, a victory can feel strangely empty. The outer world may applaud while the inner world remains unconvinced. This is because life does not reward image, it responds to alignment. When actions and values are divided, the result is friction, and friction produces heat, tension, fatigue. The person feels constantly strained without knowing why. Nothing settles, nothing completes. Everything requires effort that once felt natural. The reflection continues not to accuse, but to inform. Those who once disrupted peace often become confused by this stage. They did what they thought they needed to do. They justified it. They moved on. And yet, the ease they expected never arrives. The sense of relief remains just out of reach. They may even begin to envy calm in others without understanding what produces it. Peace looks mysterious from the outside when it has been abandoned on the inside. Meanwhile, you begin to notice a different reflection forming around you. Life responds to your clarity with space, to your boundaries with calm, to your honesty with steadiness. The more you align with what you know to be true, the more your environment supports you quietly. Not perfectly, but consistently. You are not spared difficulty, but you are spared confusion about who you are within it. This contrast is not coincidence, it is symmetry. Life is arranging each of you according to what you are carrying. You are carrying truth, even if it was costly. They are carrying avoidance, even if it felt necessary at the time. Life reflects both with equal accuracy. What makes reflection unavoidable is time. Distraction fades, circumstances change, people move on, but the inner atmosphere remains. It is the one place no one can leave, and eventually, reflection slows everything down enough to be felt. The questions grow quieter but heavier. The dissatisfaction becomes harder to ignore. The pattern becomes undeniable. This is not cruelty, it is coherence. Life seeks balance, not revenge. It does not aim to hurt, it aims to reveal, and revelation is uncomfortable only when resisted. The moment alignment is restored, the reflection softens. Until then, it remains firm, patient, exact. You do not need to participate in this process. You do not need to watch or wait. Life does not require your approval to do its work. The mirror is already in place. The reflection is already active. What was given has already shaped the space it must return to. And so you step forward lighter, not because justice was loud, but because truth was steady. You no longer carry the burden of needing things to even out. Life is already doing that quietly, relentlessly, without asking anything from you in return.